Well, hello to everyone who is listening to the recording and to those who are here live. My name is Andrea Hylen. I am a longtime member of the On Purpose Woman Global Community, and I stepped in today as host for our founder, Jenny Robertson. And I'm also here as the featured speaker today to do this speaker portion of our Connections Over Coffee gathering for the On Purpose Woman Global Community. I'm speaking today about the heroine's journey, a new turn on the evolutionary spiral. And to just share a few words about me for anyone who doesn't know, I am a life scientist living a house-free lifestyle with a mailbox in, I say Los Angeles, it's actually in Santa Monica, California, embodying the possibilities of a sharing economy. I am devoted to healing intergenerational trauma through creative expression and as an ancestral lineage healing practitioner. I'm a mother and a grandmother of 4, and I'm also the founder of Heal My Voice and the Incubator, an online co-working space for women creatives. You can find out information on my website that I'm sure is listed someplace in the show description, andreahylen.com. And I also have a link tree there to a variety of social media sites and all that I have. Okay, so I'm switching gears now into being the speaker. I want to begin by just saying that for the past few years, I've had the opportunity to speak at Connections Over Coffee in the spring and to open a conversation about a topic that I'm going to share in more depth during the annual Incubator in the fall. The topic is the heroine's journey, and today is also that. So I want you to just see this as an opening and as kind of, I'm coming with like stirring the pot for you to think about how the heroine's journey has appeared in your life. So I'm going to begin with Joseph Campbell. He first published his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, in 1949. And in it, he outlined a model of the mythological journey of the hero, the hero's journey. What I found interesting was this was published right after World War II, when women who had entered the workforce during the war were now sent home to have babies, cook, and clean their homes. So not all women, but many women were told that job is no longer available to you. Go home. The men had gone to war and they had returned home after what we could call a quest. 40 years later, in 1990, Maureen Murdock, who was a student of Joseph Campbell, published The Heroine's Journey, Woman's Quest for Wholeness. She believed that Campbell's work did not address the needs of contemporary women, so she developed a model describing a cyclical nature of the female experience, and it was based on research that she had gathered during therapy sessions with women. Now, the timing of this was that Murdock's research was collected in the 1970s and 1980s, an era that was influenced by the events of the 1960s and the rise of women's liberation. So this period saw the introduction of birth control, family planning, the legalization of abortion in 1973, and legislation that supported funding for girls in different ways. One of them was sports teams in high school, that all of a sudden an equal amount of funding was to be provided for boys' teams and girls' teams. Now, when Maureen Murdock presented the heroine's journey model to Joseph Campbell in 1983, Campbell responded, "Women don't need to make the journey. In the whole mythological tradition, the woman is there. All she has to do is realize that she's the place that people are trying to get to." So I highlighted the years they published their books because the time periods to me demonstrate an evolutionary impulse and what was rising in the collective for women. So in his statement, Campbell was still focused on women do not need a journey because it was not recognized that separate from their role in the home, women needed time and space for their individual self-development. Something was becoming visible in the larger collective, but Joseph Campbell died before Murdock's book was published and the Legacy Project created that began to outline this for women, the importance of us having, the importance of us prioritizing some time to develop ourselves that is separate from our family, our work. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about differences between the hero's journey and the heroine's journey in storytelling. And as I share the differences, just see what pops up in your mind. Think of books or films that have been meaningful to you and ways you have instinctively created the heroine's journey as experiences for yourself and your clients. And remember that the heroine's journey is a return to wholeness. It's not just about a quest. It is a reclaiming of something for yourself. So in books and films, the hero's journey is usually a male protagonist, the main character, and the heroine's journey is generally a female protagonist. And as much as we've seen this in books and films, I'm beginning to notice that there's now greater potential for women to explore the hero's journey, men to explore the heroine's journey, and for gender to be neutral in the story. So the focus of the story is on external or internal quests, and then the motivations within the story can help define the role of the main character differently. So when we think of motivation in storytelling or in our lives, the hero's journey centers around an external quest, such as conquering a villain or saving the town from disaster. The heroine's journey centers many times on a trauma or a loss, such as the death of a loved one, a job, a relationship, a disaster, a challenge. And the focus is on this reclaiming of, we could call it inner strength, reclaiming or discovering our power, personal power, and healing. I found one film interesting. The film Twister that came out in 2024 featured a female character. She was the main character who wanted to find a scientific method to calm tornadoes and mitigate the destruction of towns and of lives of humans and animals. And it presented an interesting weaving of the hero and heroine's journey, showcasing both masculine and feminine traits in the main character. So it was an external quest intertwined with an internal journey centered around trauma and loss. When I attended 45 Jonas Brothers concerts with my teenage daughter during the summer of 2009, I drove 24,000 miles in 11 weeks, and it looked like the hero's journey. It looked like a quest to attend 45 concerts. In truth, this was more of a heroine's journey that began when I was looking for ways to help my teenage daughter grieve the death of her father and to find a way to reconnect with life. She loved the Jonas Brothers and their music. So we began going to a few concerts, and I found that helping her was also awakening something in me. So 45 concerts was inspired during a walk when I just all of a sudden in nature had this impulse, like, we should go to 45 concerts this summer. But it became less about the quest for those concerts and more about freeing myself from limited a limited perspective of what I thought was possible after the death of my husband, because we didn't have enough money to cover all the transportation, lodging, food, and tickets. It really required us to use our imagination and creativity. And there was something I was learning at every concert was, what is the infinite possibility here? What can I tap into and see differently? So we accessed our intuition. We communed with spirit. We built relationships with a community of people who were either working at these concert tours or who were also going to more than one concert. And then it was this trust that was leading us to something greater. One night we slept in the car. The next night we slept at the Marriott, and a few nights later at the Hotel W in Toronto, which was a gift from one of the bus drivers of the tour. So I wouldn't have thought about that. It was tapping into something else. And then 6 months after the tour, I was inspired during a meditation to downsize my possessions from an 11-room house to a 10 by 10 storage unit and sell my house. We had returned to the ordinary world, which is what the hero does. But we only returned to let go of an old life before moving to California, where the heroine's journey continued. Okay, another difference is that in the hero's journey, the hero is always the main character, while people who serve as allies are the secondary characters or the sidekicks that come in. But in the heroine's journey, there's a connection with friends, mentors, allies. They all play a significant role, and it comes in as emotional support, physical support, a way to process what's happening. And it's an integral part of the story. The hero's journey is physical and action-oriented. The heroine's journey may appear physical at times, but it centers more on the internal processes of emotions, societal expectations, trauma, and loss. The hero's journey returns to the ordinary world with an external change or achievement that has been accomplished. The heroine's transformation leads her to return home and find a new place that matches who she has become. So the internal development changes the external situation. She rarely returns home and stays in the same place doing the same thing. All right, so turning back to Maureen Murdock's heroine's journey, she listed this as a cycle of 10 steps. It's a circular cycle. It includes action, trials, obstacles, challenge, and initiations, the same as the hero's journey. But when I look closer, the heroine is compelled to challenge the societal view that women have less value than men. There seems to be something in that in the heroine's journey. So step one of the hero's journey is a call to action. Step one for the heroine is a separation from the feminine. And when you go all around the cycle and you see step 10, the heroine is integrating a healthy masculine and a healthy feminine within her. So by separating in the beginning, this is part of the journey for her. And the main point I want to emphasize is that I believe the heroine's journey is experienced in cycles throughout a woman's life. And this is because we're always coming into more of our wholeness in our whole life. It's not just a quest. It is this dance between separating, unraveling, or rejecting feminine power and forming an allyship with the masculine, which is represented by external power traits and patriarchal structures. And along the journey of action, obstacles, initiations, the heroine begins to yearn for the feminine qualities that were not seen as valuable. She cannot return to where she began. So experiences like a dark night of the soul appear, where there's some loss, there's disappointment, there's lack of fulfillment, something where she goes underground. She lets go of something. And it may even feel like a death. And it's in this underground that she begins to heal the mother-daughter split, which can be from feminine qualities. And then she lets go of, she works with the wounded masculine that she had been drawn to. And she arrives at a place where she brings this healthy feminine and masculine, all the qualities inside of her. She embraces her intuition and she knows when to take action. She may look at her relationship with her mother and begin to see the strengths in her mother or the women of her generation and the generations that came before her, and begin realizing that they lived in a different world than she did. And that helps the heroine to reclaim feminine qualities that are internal. In 2011, when I started Heal My Voice, a nonprofit organization that focused on helping women write to heal a story of trauma and loss and reclaim personal power tied up in the story, I used a 9-month process in a circle format. And a group of 20 women would gather. On that time, we were using instant teleseminar, so we call in by phone once a week, and we'd share our stories and we'd share the alchemical process that was happening in the writing of the stories. And then after writing our stories, we spoke on Blog Talk Radio about our story and our process of healing. Then we highlighted the stories and celebrated each other on social media. A common theme that surfaced during the 9-month weekly conversations, women expressed that they had always felt more comfortable with men and did not trust women, or that women were too emotional. To me, this was the calling, the step in the heroine's journey, where there is a yearning to reconnect with the feminine and not knowing how to do it. The separation from the feminine and the allyship with the patriarchy had happened at a much younger age, and now we were coming together to reconnect with the goddess. So at every circle, I invited women to share what was happening that week as they wrote their stories, what was happening in their lives. And in the circle, we practiced holding space for a wide range of emotions, including the contrast that can come to sometimes show up where one woman is having the best day of her life and another woman is having the worst day. And how many times have we felt like we had to hold back something, that we either couldn't share our joy or we couldn't share our grief? But in that circle, we practiced more. There was no holding back, like express what's in your heart and let's just hold it. And we can hold joy and grief in the same call. We also talked about desire and jealousy, fear and anger, and the ways women had been pitted against each other. So vulnerability was seen as a strength. And speaking and revealing it all helped us learn to use our voices more. Women began to attend goddess workshops and meditation circles. And sometimes I worked with clients who thought that reconnecting to feminine power meant wearing flowing goddess clothes. And they soon discovered that the power of the sacred feminine is not in the clothes. You can wear a goddess dress if that's what you want to wear, but you can also wear a pair of jeans and work boots and know that the power of the feminine is in your voice. So the separation from the powerlessness that girls may have saw and felt in female role models and their over-identification with the masculine-dominated world that their fathers had access to outside of the home, or just male figures in general, and had disconnected from their inner authority and feminine power. This is where the sacred feminine lies. When I read Joseph Campbell's words, "The place that people are trying to get to," I thought about how women are considered the heart of the home, which is a lovely thought, you know. To add to that, in the collective, an example is a woman waiting at home for the man to return from his quest. What was missing then, and what I now understand, is that women need time and space for their self-development. Something in my generation, we just automatically expected men to take time for their career development or their rest time or whatever, but that women, it just didn't seem it was there. I mean, there was kind of this lovely romantic idea of women as damsels in distress or ladies in waiting who are dependent on men, alongside the myth that women are fully responsible for the emotional center of the home. This was true for my generation of liberated women entering adulthood in the 1970s and 1980s. And even now, I see it in the generations of women in their 30s and 40s. There's still an imbalance in this role at home, regardless of whether they work outside the home. Because I see the same thing from women, even when they choose to stay home with their young children, trying to find space for their personal development while also juggling the needs of everyone in the home. These gender roles are still in place because it's in our collective consciousness of home, family, work, and expectations. And I've noticed also that in films and television that I've been watching over the past 6 months, there's still this storytelling that goes, it doesn't highlight that women needed space for their personal development. It shows their story of women leaving the family and then returning having written a book, but not really talking about why wasn't the space there for her to do it and still maintain connection with her family. Or the storyline is women getting sick physically or mentally in order to have that time for themselves. So Maureen Murdock made this distinction, and I'm just kind of wrapping up now, that she was talking about the hero's journey as a search for one's soul and is chronicled in mythologies and fairy tales throughout the world. It does not, however, address the archetypal journey of the heroine. For contemporary women, this involves the healing of the wounded feminine that exists deep within her and the culture. I so appreciate you listening to my stories today and to this opening of a conversation, and that it stirred something in you. I have so many more stories about the heroine's journey that I could share with you. But I'll just wrap up with, as the 20th anniversary of my husband's death approaches in July, I find myself reflecting on how a cycle of the heroine's journey began on the day. Wow, that just really hit me. I could feel the emotion of that. But it was the day of his memorial service, when a flyer arrived in the mail announcing an evolutionary woman retreat. And this was almost 20 years ago. And at that moment, I felt a yearning to be an evolutionary woman. But what I discovered was that she'd been a part of me all along. And I just needed to embark on the journey to remember her. And I think the tears are coming because I'm so grateful that I've had this 20 years of remembering. And all the obstacles or trials and all the healing of the wounded feminine in groups of women has been so powerful. It's just really hitting me. So thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for holding space. And I am complete. with that now. So I will just pause or stop the recording and just thank you to all the listeners who have been here. I'm sure there's something that Jenny had for me to say at the end. Thank you. Thank you for those who were able to stay. I know that I went over today. Jenny was just saying to me, thank you to anyone who's watching the replay. If you'd like to join us for one of our 9 free Zoom gatherings a month or an in-person in Columbia, Maryland. I know there are other meetings also, but you can go to opwgc.com and find out all about our community. Or come find us on Facebook, On Purpose Woman Global Community. And there is a link in the video. So thank you to everyone. Thank you. Thank you.